All right, so I want to take our knowledge of dividing fractions, where we know that when we divide a fraction, say 1/2 divided by 2/3, we just take the reciprocal of the second fraction, so it's 1/2 times 3/2, and then we multiply to end up with 3/4. And I just want to take this kind of knowledge and build it towards using mixed numbers, which is just kind of an extra step within this algorithm, but also it's just a different way to look at in the models, and I'm going to show you a couple models too. So I took this problem straight from the Learn Zillion video that I assigned you. It says Mary Lou bought 2 2/3 yards of satin ribbon at the craft store. She was making hair bows for her nieces. If she needs 2/3 of a yard of ribbon for each hair bow, how many bows can she make? So it's 2 2/3 divided by 3. The way I want to think about this is I want to start with the 2 2/3 right here. So I'm going to kind of draw this model of this 2 2/3 yards of satin ribbon. So like here could be 1 yard of satin ribbon, here could be 2 yards of satin ribbon, and then here could be 3 yards of satin ribbon, but she only has 2/3. So she doesn't have this part. And so then you want to break them all into thirds, and so I'm really just focusing in on the 2 holes and then these 2/3 here, because 2 2/3. I want to divide it into 2/3 segments. So I can do that. Yeah, I can do that like this. Like here's 1/3, 2/3. So here's 1. Here's 1/3, 2/3. So there's 2. 1/3, 2/3. So there's 3. 1/3, 2/3. So there is 4. So you end up with exactly 4 as your answer. So she would be able to make 4 bows. Now I want to come down here and show you how to use the standard algorithm and get the same answer of 4. So 2 2/3, you got to make that into an improper fraction. So 2 times 3 is 6 plus 2 is 8/3 divided by 2/3. I'm going to take the reciprocal here and multiply. So the reciprocal divides our dividends, 8/3. We're going to multiply that by 3/2, and it's going to give us our answer. Should be 6. What we can do is not 6, 4. That's where we got 4. Yeah, okay. So what we can do is actually cross cancel. 3 goes into 3 once, 3 goes into 3 once. 8 times 1 is 8. 1 times 2 is 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 8 halves equals 4. Ta-da! We get 4. But let's rework that problem we just were on and say that Mary had 5 1/4 yards of ribbon and she needed 1 1/2 yards per bow. So she had 5 1/4 yards, needed 1 1/2 yards per bow. I want to know how many bows she can make. So when we do that, we want to kind of remember this problem. We want to think, okay, let's first draw out this 5 1/4 yards of ribbon. So that could be 1 yard. Oops. Now let's call this 2 yards, 3 yards, 4 yards, and 5 yards. And obviously there's a 1/4 yard too, so we're going to draw a 6th yard, and we're going to split it into fourths, and then we're going to ignore these 3/4. So I'm just going to not worry about those for now. Now we want to take this model and we want to find 1 1/2. So to do that, we really, like, this here would be a hole, and split this one in half. So we have 1 1/2 there, and take this half with this hole. You have another 1 1/2 there. So I'll circle those in blue. So this would be 1 1/2. Here would be 1 1/2. This would be another hole. Let's draw them in red. This would be a hole. Take half of this one. So now we're looking at another 1 1/2. And then we end up here with these 2 halves left over. So you think, oh, that's like 1. So you end up with 2 halves left over. But really what that is it's like 2 pieces then it's wondering like 2 pieces, how many 2 halves out of 1.5. So how we interpret that is kind of tricky. If we're just answering the problem, it's pretty simple at this point. Just to answer the problem of how many like bows could she make, well, 1, 2, 3, and then there's 2 left over. I'm not quite sure how to interpret those 2 left over. Like how do I interpret that? So she can make 3 bows. So now I'm still confused on how to interpret this remainder. Like, what does this mean? What is this remainder here? These 2, it's like 2 halves that are left over, which means she can make 4 bows, but she can't make 4 bows because she doesn't have enough material. So I'm thinking, what 2 halves? This is tricky. So I'm going to go through and divide this using the standard algorithm and see what the answer gives me, because the answer should interpret the remainder a little bit better. So 5 and 1/4 would be 5 times 4 is 20, plus 1 is 21/4. 1 times 2 is 2, plus 1 is 3, so we have 3 halves. This is still division. Then we'll just switch it up, take the reciprocal of the divisor, multiply. There's quite a bit of cross-canceling we can do here, because I know that 21 divided by 3 is 7. That's 3 touchdowns, 21 points. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 2 divided by 2 is 1. And 4 divided by 2 is 2. So we can do 7 times 1 equals 7. And 2 times 1 equals 2. And then we know that 7 halves is going to equal 3 and 1/2. So when I look here, I see the 3 bows. Okay, so she can make 3.5 bows. So when I come back to this model, I have to remember that these were split into halves. So really, this is a half, but it's really 2/4. And this is 1/4, because the original fraction we modeled was 5 and 1/4. So what he had left over was we had 3/4 left over. And so what we're trying to do here is figure out, when we have 3/4 a yard, what fraction of a whole ribbon would that be? And so a whole ribbon is 1.5. So if I draw, like, here's 1 ribbon, and here's 1.5 yards, so here's 1 yard. And so, like, I'm going to split them into fourths, so I can better see how 3/4 is fit in. So I don't need to worry about these, because this right here would be 1 ribbon. And then down here, I want to say, okay, here's 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. So this would be the 3/4, and then left over to 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. So it's almost like there's like these. It's like there's 6 parts of fourths, and 3/4 is like 3 of them. So 1 ribbon is 6/4, and 3/4 is 3 of them. So this would be like, just looking at it visually, it's half. 3/4 is half of a ribbon. 3/4 of a yard makes up half of the ribbon. So, and that's how I want to interpret this, is that, okay, I have enough for half of a ribbon left over. So when I come down to my answer, I know it's 3 half of a bow left over. So I know that it's 3 bows, but I can also make half, enough for half. So that means that I would need 3/4 more yards to get to a 4th full bow. Generally, I stick with the standard algorithm, because sometimes when you're dividing these fractions and really thinking about it in real-world context, it's hard with models. I'd prefer if I had hands-on. If you had the ribbon in front of you, obviously you're like, oh, okay, I can make this one, this one, this one, and I got enough for, that'd be about half. So I can either change my design and use that, or however you want to solve dealing with that half. But yeah, so that's kind of how you're dividing fractions that are mixed numbers.